The stars burned cold above the palace of a world of silver towers and floating gardens that had ruled 1,000 systems for 10,000 years. Princess Vila stood at her window, her pale blue skin catching the light of 3 moons. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders like water. She was beautiful by any standard in the galaxy, and she knew it. She was also angry. Tomorrow she would marry a human. The very thought made her stomach turn. Humans were primitive creatures from a small planet called Earth. They had only discovered space travel 300 years ago. They were weak. They were short-lived. They were nothing compared to the people who lived for 1,000 years and had conquered half the galaxy. But the war had changed everything. The humans had fought back against the Empire with a fury that shocked everyone. They did not have better weapons. They did not have stronger ships, but they had something else. They never gave up. They never surrendered. They kept fighting even when they should have died. And slowly, battle by battle, they pushed the mighty Empire back. The war lasted 50 years. Millions died on both sides. In the end, neither side could win. So they made peace. And part of that peace was a marriage between the royal family of and a human chosen by Earth's leaders. Vila was chosen because she was the 3rd princess, not important enough to matter, but royal enough to count. She felt like a sacrifice thrown to the primitive humans to keep them happy. There was a soft knock at her door. "Enter," she said, not turning from the window. Her handmaiden, a young woman named Lyra, stepped inside. "Your Highness, the human ship has arrived. Your future husband is being brought to the greeting hall." Vila closed her eyes. "What do you know about him?" "His name is," Lyra said. "He is 28 Earth years old. He was a teacher before he was chosen for this marriage. He taught children how to read and write." "A teacher," Vila laughed, but there was no joy in it. "They send me a teacher, not a general, not a scientist, a man who teaches children their letters." "Perhaps they thought he would be gentle," Lyra offered. "Perhaps they thought he would be easy to control." Vila finally turned from the window. "Let us go meet my harmless little husband." The greeting hall was enormous, with ceilings so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Hundreds of nobles stood along the walls, all dressed in their finest clothes. They had come to see the human, to judge him, to laugh at him probably. Vila walked to her place beside her father, the emperor. He was old now, his blue skin faded to gray, but his eyes were still sharp. "Remember," he said quietly, "this marriage must work. We cannot afford another war." "I understand, father." "Do you? This human may seem simple, but his people nearly destroyed us. Do not underestimate them." Before Vila could answer, the great doors opened. The human walked in alone. He was smaller than Vila expected. Most humans were short compared to the people, but this one seemed especially ordinary. He had black hair cut simply and dark eyes that seemed calm. He wore plain clothes, nothing fancy. He walked without guards, without weapons, without any sign of importance. The nobles whispered to each other. Some laughed behind their hands, but did not seem to notice. He walked straight toward the emperor and stopped at the proper distance. Then he bowed, not too deep and not too shallow. It was exactly right. "Emperor of," he said, and his voice was quiet but clear. "Thank you for welcoming me into your home. I hope to bring peace between our peoples." His words were simple. His manner was humble, but something about him made Vila pause. She could not say what it was. Perhaps it was the way he stood so still, like a pond with no ripples. Perhaps it was the way his eyes seemed to see everything without really looking. The emperor nodded. "You are welcome of Earth. This is my daughter, Princess Vila. She will be your wife." Turned to look at her. For a long moment he simply studied her face. Vila felt strange under his gaze. It was not the look of a man seeing a beautiful woman. It was something else, something she could not name. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, gentle and warm. "Princess Vila," he said, "I know this marriage was not your choice. I want you to know that I will never force anything upon you. I ask only for a chance to know you. Perhaps, in time, we might become friends." Vila did not know what to say. She had expected him to be nervous or proud or stupid. She had not expected kindness. "We shall see," she said coldly. If her words hurt him, he did not show it. He simply nodded and stepped back. The wedding happened 3 days later. It was a grand ceremony, watched by billions across the galaxy. Vila wore a dress made of starlight and crystal, wore simple black clothes. They spoke the ancient words and exchanged the sacred rings. When it was done, they were husband and wife. That night in their shared chambers, Vila stood as far from the bed as possible. "I will not share a bed with you," she said. Was sitting by the window looking out at the stars. "I did not expect you to. I will sleep on the couch." "You do not argue. You do not demand your rights as my husband." He turned to look at her, and again she saw that strange calmness in his eyes. "I told you, princess, I will not force anything. You owe me nothing." Vila frowned. "What kind of man are you?" "Just a man," he said simply, "nothing more." He pulled a thin blanket over himself and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep. Vila watched him for a long time. He looked so ordinary lying there, so harmless, so human. But something deep inside her whispered that this man was more than he appeared, much more. She told herself she was being foolish. He was just a teacher from a primitive world. There was nothing special about him at all. She was wrong. In the days that followed, proved to be a quiet presence in the palace. He woke early each morning and tended the small garden outside their chambers. He read books from the library, thousands of years of history. He learned to speak their language perfectly within a week. He was polite to everyone, from the highest noble to the lowest servant. He never raised his voice. He never complained. He never asked for anything. And that perhaps was strangest of all. The servants began to whisper about him. They said he was kind. They said he listened to their problems. One old cleaning woman said he had healed her sore back just by touching it, though no one believed her. Vila watched all of this from a distance. She did not understand this strange human. He had no power, no position, no real purpose in the palace, yet he seemed perfectly content. One evening she found him in the garden, planting flowers by moonlight. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "Do what?" "All of this, the garden, the kindness, the patience. What do you want?" He looked up at her, dirt on his hands, and smiled that gentle smile. "I want to see things grow," he said. "That is all." Vila shook her head and walked away. He was a fool, she decided, a harmless, simple fool. But as she lay in bed that night, she could not stop thinking about his smile, and the way the flowers had seemed to lean toward him, as if they knew something she did not. 3 months passed in the palace of. The seasons changed, and the silver towers glowed gold under the autumn sun. Vila found herself watching her human husband more and more, though she told herself it meant nothing. Had become part of the palace in a way she had not expected. The servants loved him. The guards respected him. Even her sisters, who had mocked the marriage at first, now spoke of him with strange fondness. But it was the strange things that troubled Vila most. It began with the museum. The Royal Museum held treasures from across the galaxy, including artifacts from races that had died long before the Empire rose. Most of these objects were just old stones and metal, interesting only to scholars. But one day, while walking through the ancient wing with, Vila noticed something impossible. The artifacts were glowing. It was faint at first, just a soft light that could have been a trick of the sun. But as moved deeper into the museum, the glow grew stronger. Old crystals that had been dark for 1,000,000 years began to shine. Metal tablets covered in unknown writing flickered with blue fire. A stone face from a dead world seemed to turn its eyes toward as he passed. "Do you see that?" Vila whispered. Looked at the glowing objects and said nothing. His face showed no surprise, no fear, no reaction at all. "This is impossible," Vila said. "These artifacts have been dead for ages. Our best scientists could not make them work. Why are they responding to you?" Touched one of the glowing crystals. The light pulsed under his fingers like a heartbeat. "Some things remember," he said quietly, "even when they are forgotten." He walked away before she could ask what he meant. That night, Vila could not sleep. She went to the library and searched through ancient records, looking for anything that might explain what she had seen. She found nothing. The artifacts were from races so old that even their names were lost. No one knew what power they had held or why they had died. But someone in the palace seemed to know something. Over the next few weeks, Vila noticed that certain people behaved strangely around. The oldest servants, the ones who had worked in the palace for centuries, watched him with wide eyes whenever he passed. The high priests of the faith whispered to each other and fell silent when Vila came near. Even some of her father's oldest advisors seemed afraid. One night she caught the Grand Advisor, a man named Lord who was 800 years old, standing outside's door. He was just standing there, staring at the door like he was looking at something holy. "Lord," Vila said, "what are you doing?" The old man jumped like he had been caught stealing. His face went pale. "Princess, I was merely." "You were watching my husband. Why?" Lord's hands shook. For a moment he looked like he might cry. "Forgive me, princess, I cannot say. Some secrets are too old, too dangerous, but I will tell you this." He leaned close, his voice barely a whisper. "Be good to him. Be very, very good to him." He hurried away before she could ask more questions. Vila was not patient by nature. She wanted answers, and she wanted them now. But every time she tried to learn more, she hit a wall. The servants claimed to know nothing. The priests refused to speak. Even her own father looked at her strangely when she asked about. "Some questions should not be asked," the emperor said. "Some answers would break your mind." "But father—" Enough! It was the first time he had ever shouted at her. He looked old and tired and afraid. "Accept your husband for what he appears to be. Do not dig deeper, please." The fear in his voice scared her more than anything else. Then came the night of the assassins. Vila was sleeping in her chamber when a crash woke her. She sat up in bed and saw the window was broken. 3 figures in black stood in the room, their weapons drawn. "Do not move, princess," one of them hissed. "You are coming with us." Vila's heart pounded. She knew she should scream, should fight, should do something, but fear froze her in place. Then walked through the door. He was wearing simple sleeping clothes, his hair messy from bed. He looked at the 3 assassins like they were mild inconveniences. "You should leave," he said calmly. The lead assassin laughed. "The human husband, this will be easy." He raised his weapon, a blade that crackled with electric fire. "Die, worm." He lunged at. What happened next, Vila could barely understand. One moment the assassin was moving forward. The next moment he was on the ground, his arm bent in a way that arms should not bend, had not seemed to move at all. The second assassin attacked, caught his blade with his bare hand. The electric fire did nothing. It simply died against his skin. Then's other hand touched the assassin's chest, and the man flew backward through the wall, crashing into the next room. The third assassin tried to run. He got 2 steps before appeared in front of him. Vila had not even seen him move. "Who sent you?" asked. The assassin was shaking with terror. I cannot say." His eyes began to glow. It was soft at first, like candlelight. Then it grew brighter, turning from brown to deep gold. The air around him seemed to hum with power. "Who sent you?" The assassin screamed, not in pain but in pure, absolute fear. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "The Shadow Council, they fear what you are. They know the old prophecies. Please, please, I did not want to come here, they made me." His eyes faded back to normal. He looked almost sad. "Go," he said. "Tell your masters that I am not their enemy, but if they threaten my wife again, I will find them." The assassin ran so fast he fell twice before reaching the door. The two unconscious men disappeared in flashes of light, transported away by some device. Then everything was silent. Vila stared at her husband, her quiet, gentle, harmless husband who grew flowers and helped old servants with their aches. The same man had just defeated 3 trained killers without breaking a sweat. The same man whose eyes had turned to gold. "What are you?" she whispered. Looked at her. The golden glow was gone, but something else remained in his eyes, something ancient and vast and lonely. "I am your husband," he said. "I am a teacher from Earth. I am someone who wanted to live a simple life." "That is not an answer." "It is the only answer I can give you right now." He walked to the broken window and began picking up the glass. "I am sorry you had to see that. I wanted to keep this hidden." "Keep what hidden? What are you hiding? What did that assassin mean about prophecies?" Set down the glass and sighed. "Do you really want to know, Vila? If I tell you, everything will change. Your whole understanding of the universe will break and rebuild. Some truths are too heavy to carry." Vila stood up from her bed. She walked toward him until they stood face to face. "I am a princess of. My people have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. I have seen wonders that would drive lesser beings mad. Whatever truth you carry, I can bear it." Studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm and gentle. "Perhaps," he said, "but not tonight. Tonight you should rest. Tomorrow, if you still wish to know, come to the old temple in the eastern mountains. Come alone, and come ready to have everything you believe destroyed." He released her hand and walked to the couch. Within moments he was asleep again, as peaceful as a child. Vila stood in the moonlight, her hand still warm from his touch. She knew she should be afraid. She knew she should call the guards, report everything, demand explanations. But she also knew, somehow, that nothing had truly threatened her tonight. The assassins had been dangerous but had never been in danger. Neither had she. Because her husband was protecting her. Her harmless human husband who was not harmless at all. Tomorrow she would go to the temple. Tomorrow she would learn the truth. And somewhere deep in her heart, she knew that tomorrow her entire world would change. The eastern mountains were ancient beyond measure. They had stood before the empire was born, before the people learned to walk upright, before the first star was named. At their peak sat a temple that no one had entered in 12,000 years. The doors were sealed. The priest said they could never be opened. The stone was harder than any metal, and no force in the galaxy could break it. Vila stood before those doors now, her heart beating fast. She had left the palace before dawn, telling no one where she was going. She had flown her small ship through morning mist and landed on the ancient landing platform that looked like it had been built for giants. The walk up the mountain path had taken 2 hours. Now she stood at the temple entrance, alone and afraid and determined. Was already there. He stood facing the massive doors, his back to her. He was wearing the same simple clothes he always wore. From behind, he looked like any ordinary man. "You came," he said without turning. "I said I would. Many people say things they do not mean. I was not sure you would really want to know." Vila walked forward until she stood beside him. The temple doors rose above them like mountains themselves, carved with symbols that made her eyes hurt to look at. She had studied ancient languages all her life, but these symbols were different. They seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. "What is this place?" she asked. "A memory," said. "A lock. A warning." He placed his hand on the door, and his fingers traced one of the moving symbols. This temple was built by the first ones, the original people who walked among the stars. They built it to hold knowledge that was too dangerous for young races. They sealed it so that only their descendants could open it. The first ones are a myth, a children's story. All stories come from somewhere. Pressed his palm flat against the stone. The people tell tales of the first ones, beings of light and power who created the stars and then vanished. The fish people speak of the deep builders who shaped their oceans. The crystal beings of remember the shapers who taught them to think. Every race has such stories. They are just ways to explain things we do not understand. Yes, but have you ever wondered why all these stories sound the same? Why every race in the galaxy, no matter how different, tells tales of powerful beings who came before? Vila had wondered. She had studied comparative mythology at the Royal Academy, and the similarities had always puzzled her. But she had never found an answer. Because they are all remembering the same thing, said. They are remembering humans. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. That is impossible, Vila said. Humans only discovered space travel 300 years ago. You are one of the youngest races in the galaxy. No's voice was sad. We are the oldest. He pressed harder against the door, and the symbols began to glow. The light grew brighter and brighter until Vila had to shield her eyes. There was a sound like thunder, like music, like a voice speaking in a language older than time. Then the doors opened. They did not swing or slide. They simply were closed and then they were open. Vila stepped back, her hand reaching for a weapon she had not brought, but just walked forward into the darkness. Come, he said, it is time for you to see. The inside of the temple was vast. Vila could not see the ceiling or the walls. She could only see the floor beneath her feet and the lights that began to appear around them. The lights were not torches or lamps. They were images, floating in the air like solid dreams. She saw a planet. It was blue and green and beautiful, with white clouds and deep oceans. She knew somehow that this was Earth, but it was not the Earth she had learned about. This Earth was covered in cities of crystal and light, cities that made the greatest architecture look like mud huts. This was Earth 2 million years ago, said, when humanity was at its peak. The image changed. She saw humans walking among the stars, but not in ships. They simply walked, their bodies surrounded by light, their feet stepping on nothing. She saw them reaching into dead worlds and making them bloom with life. She saw them touching the minds of primitive creatures and giving them the gift of thought. We were the first ones, said. We did not just discover the stars, we made them. We did not just meet other races, we created them. Every thinking being in this galaxy carries a piece of human design in their minds. You exist because we wanted you to exist. Vila felt dizzy. The images kept changing, showing her wonders beyond imagination. Humans building suns, humans tearing holes in reality, humans speaking to forces that had no names. If this is true, she whispered, what happened? Why did you fall? Why do you live on one small planet now, so primitive that we nearly conquered you? The images darkened. She saw war. Humans fighting against each other with weapons that broke worlds. She saw something worse, a sickness of the spirit, a corruption that spread through their perfect civilization like poison. We became too powerful, said. We forgot what it meant to be small, to be weak, to be mortal. We became like gods, and gods do not know compassion. Some of us wanted to end all other life, to remake the universe according to our perfect vision. Others fought to protect what we had created. The war lasted 1,000 years. The images showed the end. She saw humans destroying their own cities, sealing their own power, choosing to forget everything they had been. The survivors made a choice. They gave up their power. They erased their own memories. They returned to their home world and lived as simple creatures, hoping that time would heal the corruption in their souls. They became mortal again, weak again, small again. They became what you call primitive humans. But you remember, Vila said, you still have the power. Not all of us forgot. Turned to face her, and his eyes were glowing gold again. Some of us kept a piece of what we were, passed down through generations, waiting. We were meant to be guardians, to wake only if the corruption returned. For 2 million years we have lived quiet lives, watching, hoping that the darkness was truly gone. And is the darkness gone? His face was sad. I do not know. I feel something stirring in the deep places between stars, something old and angry. That is why I agreed to this marriage. I needed to be closer to the center of the galaxy, closer to where the darkness once began. Vila looked at the floating images around them. She saw the faces of ancient humans, beings of light and power and terrible beauty. She looked at this quiet man who grew flowers and helped old women and never raised his voice. "You are one of them," she said. "You are one of the first ones. I carry their memory, their power, their burden." He reached out and touched her face, his fingers gentle. "I have lived many lives, Vila. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched stars die and be born again. But in all that time I have never stopped hopping." Hopping for what? That one day I could be just a man. That I could love and be loved, not as a god but as a simple person. That is why I agreed to marry you. Not for politics, not for power. I agreed because when I first saw your image, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. What? Hope. Vila did not know what to say. Her mind was full of impossible images, impossible truths. Everything she had believed about the universe was wrong. Humans were not primitives. They were the creators of everything. And her husband was not a harmless teacher. He was something beyond her understanding. But when she looked at his face, she did not see a god. She saw a man who was tired and lonely and hopping for something better. "This is a lot to accept," she said finally. "I know, take whatever time you need. I have one question. Ask. If you are so powerful, if you are truly what you say you are, why do you stay with me? Why do you not simply take what you want?" Smiled. It was the same gentle smile he always had, the smile that made servants trust him and flowers grow toward him. "Because power means nothing without love," he said. "I have had power for millions of years. It has never made me happy. But these months with you, even when you were cold to me, even when you thought I was beneath you, these months have given me more joy than 1,000 victories and 1,000 wars." He took her hand. "I do not want to rule you, Vila. I do not want to rule anyone. I just want to grow my garden and read my books and maybe, someday, have you look at me the way I look at you." Vila felt tears on her face. She did not know when she had started crying. "I need time," she said. "You have all the time in the universe." They walked out of the temple together. The doors closed behind them, silent and eternal. And as they flew back to the palace, Vila realized that somewhere in the past 3 months, she had stopped hating her human husband. She was not sure what she felt now. It was too big, too strange, too new. But she held his hand the whole way home. 2 weeks had passed since the temple, and Vila found herself changed in ways she could not explain. She looked at the stars differently now, knowing they had been placed there by human hands. She looked at her own people differently, knowing they existed because ancient humans had willed them into being. And she looked at differently most of all. They still slept in separate beds. They still spoke carefully, politely, like strangers sharing a house. But something had shifted between them. When their eyes met, the air felt electric. When their hands touched by accident, neither pulled away quickly anymore. One morning, Vila woke to find already in the garden. He was kneeling in the dirt, planting new seeds, his face peaceful in the early light. She watched him from the window for a long time, this man who carried the weight of 2 million years on his shoulders but still found joy in making things grow. She was falling in love with him. She knew it now, though she had fought against knowing it. She was falling in love with a being older than her entire civilization, a creator of worlds, a forgotten god in human form. The thought terrified her and thrilled her in equal measure. But she never got to tell him. Because that was the day the sky cracked open. It happened without warning. One moment, the morning was calm and bright. The next moment, a sound rolled across the planet like thunder that would not stop. Vila ran to the window and saw something that froze her blood. The sky was splitting. Cracks of pure light spread across the heavens like broken glass, and through those cracks shapes were descending. They were not ships. They were not weapons. They were beings vast beyond imagination, made of light and shadow and things that had no names. The Eternal Watchers had come. Vila had heard stories of them, ancient tales from before the Empire was born. They were said to be the oldest things in the universe, witnesses to the birth of time itself. Some called them gods. Some called them the forces that held reality together. No one truly knew what they were. But everyone knew that when they appeared, worlds ended. Alarms screamed throughout the palace. Guards ran in every direction. Ships rose from the defense platforms preparing to fight, but Vila knew it was useless. You could not fight the Eternal Watchers. You could only pray they would leave. She ran to find. He was standing in the garden, his face turned up to the cracked sky. The descending beings cast strange shadows across his features. He did not look afraid. He looked sad. "They found me," he said quietly. "After all this time, they finally found me." "What do you mean? Who are they? Why are they here?" Before could answer, a voice spoke. It did not come from any direction. It came from everywhere at once, from the air and the ground and the spaces between thoughts. "Tae of the first blood, heir of the Architects. We have searched for you across ages. We have finally found the last of your kind." The shapes in the sky grew closer. Vila could see them more clearly now, though her mind struggled to understand what she was seeing. They were faces and not faces, forms and not forms, light folded into patterns that should not exist. "Go back," said. His voice was calm, but there was something beneath it, something that made the ground tremble. "I left your domain long ago. I want no part of your wars." "There is no going back. The darkness stirs again. The corruption your ancestors away is breaking free. You must take your place. You must become what you were born to be." "I was born to be a man, nothing more." "You were born to be a god." The shapes descended lower. Defense ships fired their weapons, but the energy simply passed through the beings without effect. Soldiers on the ground tried to run, but their feet would not move. The whole world seemed frozen except for, and the things in the sky. "Please," Vila whispered, "what is happening?" He turned to look at her. His eyes were glowing gold again, brighter than she had ever seen them. But behind the glow, she could still see the man who planted flowers. The man who had asked only for a chance to be her friend. "They want me to become what I was," he said. "They want me to take back the power my ancestors gave up, to become a being like them, to fight the darkness that is returning." "Will you?" "If I do, I will not be me anymore. I will be something else, something greater and lesser at the same time. I will have power to shape worlds, but I might lose the ability to love them." Tears ran down Vila's face. "And if you refuse?" "They will take me anyway, or they will destroy this world trying." He looked up at the cracked sky, at the waiting gods. "I have run for so long. Perhaps it is time to stop running." "No," Vila grabbed his hand. "There must be another way. You cannot sacrifice yourself. You cannot leave me." The words surprised her as much as they surprised him. She had not meant to say them, but now that they were out, she knew they were true. "You cannot leave me," she said again. "I did not know I could love anyone. I thought I was too proud, too cold, but you showed me something different. You showed me that power is not everything, that kindness matters, that patience can be strength." Looked at her with wonder on his face. "You love me." "I love you. I love the man who tends gardens and helps old women and reads books all night. I do not want a god. I want you." The beings in the sky spoke again. "This is irrelevant. The heir must accept his destiny. the universe requires it. But something was changing. Vila could feel it in the air, a warmth spreading from where her hand touched. Golden light was flowing between them, gentle as sunshine. "You are wrong," said to the watchers. His voice was different now, carrying echoes of ages past. "My ancestors did not give up their power to hide from you. They gave it up because they understood something you never could." The shapes in the sky flickered with confusion. "Explain." "Power without love is corruption. That was the sickness that destroyed us. That was the darkness we sealed away. We did not seal it in some far corner of space. We sealed it in ourselves. We gave up godhood because godhood made us monsters." The golden light grew brighter. It was not just flowing between and Vila now. It was spreading outward, touching the frozen soldiers, the paralyzed servants, the terrified people across the planet. "But we also left behind a cure," continued. "We scattered ourselves among the young races, living as mortals, learning to love again, learning to be small. Every act of kindness we performed, every moment of genuine love we felt, we were healing the corruption one piece at a time." The watchers were silent, their forms flickering. "You have searched for me for ages," said. "You thought I was hiding, but I was not hiding. I was healing, and now I am ready." He rose into the air, lifting Vila with him. The golden light surrounded them both, warm and gentle and impossibly vast. Vila should have been afraid, but she felt only peace. "I am the last of the first ones," said, his voice echoing across the planet, across the system, across the galaxy. "I carry the power of my ancestors and the love they learned to feel again. I am not a god who rules from above. I am a man who loves from within, and I will not abandon my people." The watchers looked at him. For a long moment nothing happened. Then slowly they began to lower themselves. They did not attack. They did not threaten. They descended until they hung just above the ground, their vast forms somehow smaller now, somehow more humble. And they knelt. Not all the way to the ground, because beings like them did not truly have knees. But they bent their forms in a gesture that was unmistakably submission, unmistakably reverence. "We understand now," they said. "We had forgotten what your kind truly were, not CONQERORS, not DSTROYRS, teachers, GARDNERS, healers. We kneel not to your power, heir of the ARCHITCTS. We kneel to your wisdom." Across the palace, across the planet, across all the worlds watching through their screens and scanners, billions of beings saw the same thing. The gods of the universe were kneeling before a human. Vila held tight to his hand as they floated in the golden light. She looked at his face, at the tears running down his cheeks, at the joy and relief and love shining in his eyes. "You did it," she whispered. "You showed them another way." "We did it," he said. "Your love gave me the strength. Without you, I would have surrendered to what they wanted. I would have become a god and lost myself. I would never let that happen." He smiled, that same gentle smile she had first seen on their wedding day. But now she understood what it truly meant. It was not the smile of a harmless man. It was the smile of someone who had chosen to be gentle, despite having the power to be anything. Below them, the world was waking up. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Servants stood in wonder. The emperor himself fell to his knees, understanding at last what kind of being his daughter had married. But Vila did not care about any of that. She only cared about the man holding her hand, the man who had waited 2 million years to find someone who would love him as he was. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go home," said. "Now we live." The golden light faded gently, and they floated back down to the garden. Around them, the flowers were blooming, brighter and more beautiful than any flowers had ever bloomed before. The gods remained kneeling in the sky, waiting to hear what the last human god would ask of them. But did not ask for anything. He just walked back to his garden, his wife's hand in his, and knelt in the dirt to tend his plants. Some things mattered more than ruling the universe. Some things mattered more than anything at all. The galaxy had changed in a single day. The appearance of the Eternal Watchers, their words, and their kneeling before a human had been broadcast to every world, every ship, every corner of known space. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days after the event were filled with chaos. Every government demanded answers. Every religion rewrote its books. Scientists argued endlessly about what they had witnessed, trying to explain the unexplainable with theories that always fell short. Philosophers debated whether humanity was truly the creator of all life, and what that meant for the meaning of existence itself. Ambassadors from 1,000 worlds traveled too, requesting an audience with. They brought gifts beyond imagination, planets, systems, artifacts of impossible power. They offered him crowns and thrones and dominion over everything that existed. He refused them all. Vila stood beside him during these meetings, watching as king after king bowed before her husband. She saw their confusion when he declined their offerings. She saw their frustration when he explained, again and again, that he wanted nothing but to be left alone. "But you are a god," one emperor said, his voice trembling. "You created our ancestors. You shaped our very souls. How can you not want to rule us?" Looked at the emperor with kind eyes. "Did your mother rule you after you were grown? Did she demand tribute and worship simply because she gave you life?" "That is different," she was just a mother, yes. And I am just a parent of a different kind. I do not want children who kneel. I want children who stand tall, who make their own choices, who become more than I ever was." The emperor did not understand. Few of them did. But they accepted his words because what else could they do? You could not force a god to rule. As the weeks passed, the visitors became fewer. The galaxy slowly returned to something like normal, though normal would never mean the same thing again. People went back to their lives, their work, their small daily concerns. But in their hearts they carried a new knowledge. They were not alone. They had never been alone. Someone had watched over them since the beginning of time, and that someone had chosen love over power. Vila and found their own kind of normal too. The palace gave them privacy now, understanding that the princess and her husband needed space. Their chambers were quiet places, filled with books and plants and soft music. Still tended his garden every morning. Vila still studied her histories, though now she was writing a new history, the true history of the first ones and how they became human again. But the greatest change was between them. One evening, as the 3 moons rose over, Vila found sitting by their window. He was looking at the stars with an expression she could not read. She sat beside him, and for a long moment they did not speak. "Do you regret it?" she finally asked. "Regret what?" "Giving up the power. The Watchers offered you everything. You could have become what you once were, ruled the universe, shaped reality itself. Instead, you are here in a small room looking at stars." Turned to her. In the moonlight he looked young and old at the same time, mortal and eternal, simple and infinitely complex. "I have had power," he said. "For millions of years I carried it like a weight on my soul. I could create worlds with a thought. I could destroy them just as easily. But power never answered the question that mattered most." "What question?" "Is there anyone who loves me for what I am, not what I can do?" Vila felt her heart twist. She took his hand, holding it tight. "I love you," she said. "Not because you are powerful, not because you made the stars. I love you because you are kind to servants, because you plant flowers, because you stayed gentle when you had every reason to become hard." His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You know, in all my long life, no one ever said those words to me and truly meant them. Everyone who claimed to love me wanted something. My power, my favor, my protection. But you wanted nothing except me. You are all I ever wanted. I just did not know it at first." He laughed softly, a sound of pure joy. "I remember our wedding day. You looked at me like I was dirt beneath your feet, I thought to myself, this proud princess will never love me. I should just accept my fate and be content with duty. I was a fool. We were both fools, but fools can learn. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I have waited 2 million years for this moment, for someone to see past the god and find the man. It was worth every lonely century. Vila leaned against him, feeling his warmth, his heartbeat, his breath. He felt so human, so real, so hers. "What will we do now?" she asked. "The whole galaxy knows what you are. They will never let us be truly ordinary." "No," agreed. "But we can try. We can live our small lives in our small room, tend our garden, read our books. We can love each other. And if the darkness returns, if the corruption breaks free, I will face it. But I will not face it as a god seeking to prove his power. I will face it as a man protecting his home. And I will be beside you. You do not have to be. The darkness my ancestors sealed away, it is terrible beyond imagining. It broke gods and shattered worlds. You could die." Vila smiled. "I am a princess of, my people have faced wars and plagues and disasters that would make lesser races give up. We never give up, and I am your wife. Where you go, I go. Whatever you face, we face together." Looked at her with wonder and love, and something that might have been hope. "How did I get so lucky?" he whispered. "You planted flowers. You were patient. You never stopped believing that love was possible." "That sounds very simple." "The best things usually are." They sat together until the moon set and the stars wheeled overhead. They did not speak much. They did not need to. There was a peace between them now, a connection that went deeper than words. Later that night, for the first time since their wedding, they shared a bed. Not out of duty or expectation, but because they wanted to. They held each other in the darkness, two beings from different worlds, different times, different ways of existing. But in that moment, they were just a man and a woman who had found each other against all odds. Morning came eventually, as mornings always do. Rose early to tend his garden, and Vila watched him from the window, a smile on her face. The flowers were blooming brighter than ever, colors that had no names, scents that could heal broken hearts. The emperor came to visit later that day. He was old and tired, and had never fully recovered from the shock of learning what his daughter's husband truly was. But he looked at Vila with pride. "You have done something I never thought possible," he said. "What is that, father?" "You have tamed a god." Vila laughed. "I did not tame him, I simply loved him. There is a difference." The emperor nodded slowly, understanding perhaps for the first time. "Perhaps that is the secret your husband's ancestors forgot. Perhaps that is what broke them in the end. They had power over everything except their own hearts. And now he has power over nothing except his garden. That is as it should be, I think." The emperor left, and the palace was quiet again. Vila walked out to the garden, where was planting new seeds. She knelt beside him in the dirt, getting her royal dress muddy without caring. "What are these?" she asked, looking at the strange seeds. "A flower from old Earth. It has been extinct for 2 million years, but I remember how to grow them." "You are bringing back the past." "I am growing the future." He looked at her, his eyes warm. "Everything that was lost can be found again. Everything that was broken can heal. It just takes time and care and love." Vila took some seeds from his hand and began planting them beside him. They worked together in silence, their hands in the earth, their hearts at peace. Above them, the sky was clear and blue and full of stars. Somewhere out there, the eternal watchers waited, keeping their vigil as they always had. Somewhere out there, darkness stirred in its ancient prison, testing its chains. Somewhere out there, billions of beings went about their lives, unaware that they owed their existence to the quiet man planting flowers in a palace garden. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was the dirt under their fingers, the sun on their backs, the love between them. What mattered was this moment, this life. This choice to be small in a universe that had offered them everything. Looked at his wife, his princess, his reason for hopping again. Vila looked back at him, her harmless human husband who had turned out to be something far more. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," he replied. And somewhere in the distance, the first of the ancient flowers began to bloom, their petals opening to the light like prayers being answered. The story of the first ones was over. The story of and Vila was just beginning.